Very good evening to all of you. Thanks for tuning in to the Sunday edition of the Urban Debate. I am Afrida Ali. Our focus will be on the big story coming in from Maharashtra. Remember, there was an explosive letter written by the former Commissioner of Police, Param Bir Singh, to the Chief Minister of Maharashtra, levelling serious allegations on Home Minister Anil Deshmukh. Now, there have been quite a few updates after that happened yesterday. Strong reactions coming in from all the three parties of the Aghadi government in Maharashtra. Two big updates today. The reaction of NCP Chief Sharad Pawar, who questions the timing and says, why didn't Param Bir Singh speak up earlier? And also saying now it is up to Uddhav Thackeray to decide. But more importantly, at this point, NCP seems to be defending Anil Deshmukh and of course calling for a probe, etc. Anil Deshmukh's strong defense in this case, what he seems to be suggesting is that the police commissioner was responsible for reinstating Sachin Waze, and when his proximity to Waze started unfolding, that is when Param Bir Singh started getting hostile towards the government, and the Home Minister believes that this is a way of being on the offensive after being caught on the wrong foot. Now, other important reaction, of course, the BJP at this point making very big claims that the Shiv Sena, as soon as they formed the government, brought back Waze only to have these kind of extortion rackets running to collect money for the respective parties. So this is a crisis in the middle of a raging second wave of the COVID pandemic. Remember, Mumbai is reporting close to 3,000 cases every day. The positivity rate has gone above 20%. At this point of time, it is the worst affected state by far, and therefore this couldn't have come at a worse timing. Let me introduce my guest this evening. We'll have all the points of view discussed here. I have with me today Atul Londe Patil, spokesperson of the Congress, joining us. Gurbir Singh, consulting editor, New Indian Express. Clyde Castro, spokesperson of the NCP, joining us. We'll also have Ram Kadam of the BJP eventually joining us as well. Thanks very much, gentlemen, for joining us on this episode of Urban Debate. But before I go across to the conversation that I want to have, let me quickly bring in our reporter on ground, Mayuresh, who will put things in perspective for us and the latest developments that we are tracking today. Mayuresh, so bring us up to speed with what all has happened. There is a meeting going on even now at Sharad Pawar's residence in Delhi, but the three parties of the Aghadi are speaking in three different voices.
Absolutely, they are speaking in three different voices, but somewhere they are, even in their statement, they are trying to basically fill these cracks which were in open. Now, if we talk about NCP state president clearly said that there is no chance that HM, the Home Minister, will step down and there is no need for his resignation. But what we heard in the press conference where the Sharad Pawar address in Delhi, he clearly said that I left it to the CM, being a head of the cabinet, it's his prerogative to ask for the resignation, but whatever the charges have been leveled against DGP as well as against Home Minister are grave and they need to be investigated, and that's why he suggested name of a senior IPS officer or former IPS officer, Julia Ribeiro. Now let's talk about Shiv Sena. Shiv Sena again defended Param Bir Singh, saying that he was a good cop, but again Sanjay Raut clearly said the allegations are grave and it needs to be proved. Now if you talk about Congress clearly said that it's kind of a conspiracy which BJP has hatched, and they have also connected this conspiracy with the DG Vanzara and Amit Shah controversy way back in 2002.
Yes, that's very interesting, and all of those aspects I want to bring up in the conversation today. First to you, Clyde Castro. Is the NCP defending Anil Deshmukh? Because if we pay attention to what Mr. Sharad Pawar said, on one hand, of course, he's saying that there should be a probe, etc. But on the other hand, he is very clearly saying that the Commissioner of Police has spoken up only after he was transferred. He has allowed all this to happen under his watch. Why is the NCP standing in defense of Anil Deshmukh at this point?
The question here is, Afrida, you have to understand one thing. When did Mr. Param Bir Singh write this letter? If he claims, according to all the tall claims that he's making, that I've known about this, say, let's go back to, say, give him the benefit of the doubt, he talks about February. If he knew this in February, why was he waiting all this while? He should have brought it out when he went and met whoever he claims that he's met and said whatever he has said. He didn't mention all these things. Now, going to meet Mr. Pawar, going to meet Mr. Uddhav Thackeray, yes, he's met. Mr. Pawar has very clearly said that, yes, he did come and meet me, but he didn't mention all this, what he's written in the letter. And I mean, the timing is questionable, because after he was transferred and when he gets to know that, all the links are going to be exposed, he goes out and writes his letter. So it's a clear case of vendetta. And the fact of the matter is, we've made it very clear. Earlier in the day, Mr. Pawar said that, he suggested the name of Mr. Julio Ribeiro to, lead this probe. I believe Mr. Ribeiro has denied this. But we are open to the fact that a probe should be done into this. And whoever is the culprit, let it come out in the open. We are not hiding from anything. Whatever has to be done.
No, you are saying that Param Bir Singh never spoke up earlier, but he did. He says that in the letter, that I informed Mr. Pawar about what he calls misdeeds and malpractices. You are saying that he did not, but what Mr. Singh says is, I very much informed several ministers and Mr. Sharad Pawar. His name is mentioned in the letter.
So my question to you, Afrida, is very simple. You say what Mr. Param Bir Singh wrote or whatever he said. Are you going to only believe that, or are you going to believe also the other side? So if you believe one side, why can't you believe the other side? There were two sides that are involved in this whole conversation. You and I were not there in that room.
We are going to bring in all the points of view. There are no sides that we're taking. But just to put out the facts here, what the letter says and what you think is the reason for it.
No, Afrida, everything.
No, the facts are not out. We have to look at it.
Can I finish?
No, how are you saying that the facts are out? We don't know the facts yet. We don't know whether the NCP is defending Anil Deshmukh, because he is not alone in this. Don't you think that's a valid question? People will stand up and ask that the reason why this is happening the way it is because there must be more involved in this, and this is all a pact, which is why you have to defend Anil Deshmukh. There is no other way. That's a valid question, isn't it?
Okay, now are you done with what you said? Will I get my uninterrupted time, please? It's a humble request. Because I want to answer your question. I don't want to shy away from your question.
Go ahead.
Okay. When I said the fact is out, the fact of the content of the letter written by Mr. Param Bir Singh is out in the public domain. The fact of what Mr. Pawar said is also out in the public domain. So both the facts of what one person has said, who was spoken to, the other person who spoke about it, his letter is out in the public domain. So we have two things out in the open. We will look into it, and that's what Mr. Pawar said. That if everything has to be understood, and if you need to get to the root of this whole thing, we need to do a probe with this. So that's where we are heading to. So I'm not saying that you will hear my side.
Okay, fair enough. Let's listen into. I want to go across to Mr. Ram Kadam. Good evening, Mr. Kadam. Thanks for joining in.
Good evening.
Before I go across to you, let's listen into what Sharad Pawar said.
He made the allegations. It is a prerogative of the Chief Minister to take appropriate decision, and CM has full authority to take decision regarding allegations, inquiry about these allegations. And I will suggest that this is very important and sensitive case. Allegation is made by police authority of Mumbai against Home Minister, and also there are a series of lapses which was brought to the notice of media by certain sections by Bombay police, which affect the reputation of Bombay police too. So I honestly feel there has to be in-depth inquiry. Allegations against Home Minister, which is a serious allegation, is Home Minister has instructed some of the staff members of Bombay Police, they should collect 100 crores per month and hand over to him. मालूम है मेरे पास कोई इस बात का सबूत नहीं है, मगर मैंने सुना दिल्ली में आकर गए थे जो भूतपूर्व चीफ मिनिस्टर ये भी दिल्ली में आकर गए थे, कुछ लोगों से बात की थी, उनका वो अधिकार है, मैं नाम नहीं कह सकता। और इसके बाद बार बार वहाँ एजुकेशन शुरू हो गई।
Okay, even as we speak, there's another meeting happening right now at Sharad Pawar's residence in Delhi that was also attended, interestingly, by Mr. Kamal Nath of the Congress party. Mr. Ram Kadam, of course, the Congress is calling this BJP ploy. You heard Mr. Pawar also hinting that there could be a conspiracy to destabilize the Aghadi government. I want to ask you about what Mr. Anil Deshmukh has said in his defense, that it was Param Bir Singh who brought in Sachin Waze, who reinstated him. It was never Mr. Deshmukh.
See, at the onset, let me tell you, this is extremely appalling and deplorable. All these three parties, this Maharashtra government, has been trying to protect this all conspirators, and they have been completely cover up this whole conspiracy. This is now very much evident. First of all, as all we know that the money counting machine has been recovered from Waze's car. He has using all the fancy cars which cost more than a couple of crore rupees. Then now the issue is, this is now very much transparent that the more skeletons will tumble out from the closets. Their names should be exposed, and day by day, some of the new stories have been coming up. Now the issue is, it's a very crystal clear. If you remember, during the assembly session, Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray, the way he defended Mr. Waze, like Waze, his party worker, or Waze and Shiv Sena has some links. So that was completely clearly evident. Not only Sharad Pawarji earlier said that this is a very small issue. I really don't understand. It's a clearly extortion.
Yes.
By the police, by the government. How can it be a small issue? Why this government is trying to protect Waze gang? This is our first question. Now, in other hand, Mr. Pawar today addressed the press and said, this is a serious issue. The same Pawar 2 weeks ago, he said it's a small issue.
No,
2 weeks
never
ago,
said it's a small issue.
Wait.
It was never a... No, 1 minute, Rambhai.
I have great respect for you. Allow me to complete when your turn will come.
I don't want to interject.
When your turn will come.
No, I'll come back to you. Mr. Castro. Just hold on. Let Mr. Kadam finish, please.
Thank you, Afrida. Afrida, our demand is Chief Minister and Home Minister both should go for the narco test. They do their own narco test. Definitely, whatever the truth will prevail. Why they spoke for the narco test? They should step
right.
down.
Even as you say that, Mr. Kadam, it seems what the other side is saying, what Mr. Deshmukh is saying, and this is in his official tweet as well, that all threads in the explosives case were leading up to Mr. Param Bir Singh, and that is why now this is his way of deflecting the issue. The moment his proximity with Waze is established, he's gone on the offensive. And of course, the Congress also, I'll allow Mr. Patil to come in here. Mr. Patil, the Congress seems to be, the BJP, of course, at this point is making another very big claim that the moment the Aghadi government came to power, you had Sachin Waze reinstated, and the whole purpose of getting him back was to preside over this extortion racket.
No, Afrida. Ram Kadam ji, please listen to me first. Allow other people to speak out. You had your time. See, Afrida, the question is very clear. What Pawar Sahib he said, Mr. Devendra Fadnavis has come to Delhi. After that, Mr. Param Bir Singh also went to Delhi. We don't know whether they met there or not. But this letter comes after that, number one. Number two, Anil Deshmukh ji was corona infected on 3rd of February. And he spent all of his month of February in a hospital. And Mr. Param Bir Singh is claiming that ACP Patil and Bhujbal and Waze met Mr. Deshmukh during February. The first lie. The second lie, when Deshmukh sir was there for interview at some media house event, Maharashtrian of the Year, he clearly told to the people of Maharashtra that certain lapses have been committed by Commissioner of Police Mr. Param Bir Singh, which cannot be pardoned of. This was the statement given by Anil Deshmukh, and it was clear that Param Bir Singh and Waze, this racket is involved in whatever that has happened in Antilia case, Antilia bomb scare.
No, but we still don't know why was Sachin Waze reinstated and was he deputed to do this job if it was all happening under the watch of Mr. Param Bir Singh? Why didn't he write this letter earlier? Why wasn't this letter, the same letter which was leaked to the media, why wasn't it? Okay, one by one, I have very limited time. I need to bring in Mr. Gulbir Singh as well to the discussion, and I will allow Mr. Clyde Castro to respond to all the statements. Hold on. Gulbir Singh ji. Okay, 10 seconds. Go ahead.
Actually, Sharad Pawar sir has said very clear cutly that it is Param Bir Singh who has got him reinstated. It is a committee under the chairmanship of Commissioner with 4 other senior officers. Home Minister and Chief Minister of India has nothing. Chief Minister of Maharashtra has nothing to do with the reinstatement of Mr. Waze. So case is very clear.
Okay, got your point. You are saying Param Bir Singh is responsible for getting Waze and he knew all this happening. He could have spoken out earlier. He only, I got your point. You are saying that he's only spoken out after Mr. Anil Deshmukh spoke to a Marathi channel saying that Param Bir Singh is responsible for certain lapses in the investigation into this case. It is only because of his injured pride. I got your point. Gulbir Singh, I'm sorry, please allow everyone to come into the discussion. We need all points of view here. Gulbir Singh, I wanted to ask you, does this expose a larger malaise? What is happening here is that a politician and a police nexus is getting exposed at whatever level that is. I agree that this is still being investigated, but there is a culture which is known to everyone, isn't it?
So that's, you should take the discussion a little wider. The point is that it's you see, the issues are going towards what are the options? Do they dump Anil Deshmukh as a scapegoat, or do they all pull together and stand by him? Because it's obvious that Anil Deshmukh is not acting on his own.
Yes.
He's acting as a group. He's acting for the government, for a section of the government. And you see, the first question that you asked, are the Mahavikas Alliance, are they pulling in different directions? They could be, but you see, it's in the interest of the survival of the government that they are ultimately going to go the same way, and they're going to come together. It's very obvious even from Mayuresh's reporting that ultimately they're going to stand together because saving the government is more serious than saving Waze or maybe saving Param Bir Singh.
Yes.
Now, you see, and you talk of the larger malaise.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's a fact that, here you have one Param Bir Singh. But Param Bir Singh was also a very good, he was a blue-eyed boy for a very long time. Waze has been also a blue-eyed boy for a long time. And each government has its own. I mean, what are we talking about? Hasn't the Fadnavis government?
Right. So that's the larger picture, Gulbir Singh. Quick last word to Clyde Castro and we close this discussion. I'm sorry I'm having to interrupt you. Mr. Castro, let's not forget that Uddhav Thackeray pitched for Sachin Waze very strongly, came out staunchly in support of him. That caused a lot of embarrassment. And even before we could recover from that, there's another explosive material that has now come, which has taken, and your party, the NCP, has taken a beating with that.
Yeah, Afrida, first and foremost, I'd like to make it very clear. Nowhere and never has Mr. Pawar said that this is a small issue. From day one, whenever he had spoken a few days ago and today, he said this is a serious issue, serious allegation has been made and we need to look into it. So I think, Rambhai, who's normally a very well-read person, I don't know why he's taking like this. All these canard and conjectures that they are placing out in the open is not going to work for them because there's a law. There's a law in place. The fact of the matter is when Mr. Anil Deshmukh very categorically and clearly said that there's more to a year than meets the eye, that's when Param Bir Singh was transferred to the Home Guards. That's when Param Bir Singh has gone and done what he has done.
No, but the problem, Mr. Castro, is that the Shiv Sena says today Param Bir Singh is an excellent cop. He has a great track record. So clearly you are not on the same page with your ally, and that could spell trouble. I'm afraid we'll have to close the conversation. I would have loved to continue and hear other points of view as well, but unfortunately run out of time. Quickly, very quickly, 10 seconds please.
I'd like to compliment you that you have a lot of patience when the BJP person talks, but you have no patience. Maybe you are very comfortable interjecting me, so I think I give you that comfort level. Thank you.
I asked you 2 consecutive questions, allowed you to finish all your points. Thank you so much for joining us. This is, of course, going to be a major flashpoint between the allies of the Maha Aghadi government. We'll have to wait and see how things work out from here on. We will be tapping all the important details of this controversy. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to all our viewers for watching this conversation.